This is needlepointers.com with a quick table runner tutorial. If you need a last-minute gift, this table runner could be just what you need. This runner can be made in about 1 hour. I have a couple of different versions of this table runner so you can see how the way you line up the wedges can cause you to have different waves in your table runner. I made this table runner in about 1 hour. For this one, I cut the wedges pretty wide so there's less wave in this runner. This is the second runner that I made, and it was also made with 3 fabrics. This time I cut the wedges much smaller so there is more wave in the runner and more wedges. These 2 samples show how the pattern can change depending on the width of the wedges and the fabric. The length of the runner can be easily changed for your table by adding or removing wedges. It can also be more or less wavy depending on how often you swap the wedges back and forth. For more information and measurements to make runners like these 2, please click the link in the description of this video to go to our website for this project. What you need for this project is the 10-degree ruler, 4 fabrics. You'll either need a 1/3 yard cut of each fabric or 4 fat quarters, a 1/2 yard of backing fabric, and a 1/2 yard of batting fabric. You'll also need a sewing machine, thread, your rulers, mat, and a rotary cutter. A 1/3 cut yard of fabric should be approximately 12 inches wide by the width of the fabric. For this runner, you will need about half of the width of fabric, so trim each of the 4 fabrics to be 10 inches wide by approximately 20 to 21 inches long. Next, layer the 4 fabrics on top of one another. I put this one on top because I have less of a width of this fabric. The other ones are longer. Take your ruler and square up the fabrics. I'm going to square up the fabrics on all 4 sides. You are now ready to cut the wedges. If you want smaller wedges, then move the ruler up so the smaller end is at the edge of the ruler. Similar to this. If you want less wedges that are wider, move the ruler so the wider edge is on the fabric. So for the 2 that I made previously, this one I cut on the 11-inch line going up, the wedges, and this table runner I cut on the 4-inch line going this way. For this runner, I will cut it with the ruler line on the 9 line going this way so that you can see what it will look like. Remember which line you use so that when you turn the ruler around you can align it from the other side with the same line so that your wedges are the same size all the way across. So cut the first wedge on both sides of the ruler. Now flip the ruler around and align it from the top on the same line and align it along the cut edge. And then cut your next wedge. Continue flipping the ruler and cutting the wedges until you have 5 or 6 wedges from all 4 fabrics. I'll be back in a minute after I'm done cutting this. On a work surface, lay your wedges out side by side. Lay 4 to 6 wedges side by side in one direction, and then flip the wedges and start laying them in the opposite direction. As you do this, you will see the runner will start to form a wave. Continue flipping and laying the wedges out on your work surface. You can experiment with different patterns to come up with the wave you like for your runner. You can place the different fabrics randomly, or you can place them in a pattern. Keep in mind the width and length of your table runner. If the length becomes more than 40 inches long, you will need more backing fabric, or you may need to piece 2 pieces of backing fabric together. If you want to stick with the 1/2 yard or less of backing fabric, keep your runner between 32 and 40 inches long and no more than 16 inches wide. Then you should not need to piece the backing together. Keep in mind that your runner will become smaller when sewn together because there will be 1/4 inch seams between every piece. But laying it out will give you an idea of the size and the shape. If your runner is too big, you can always leave out some of the wedges that you cut and use them possibly for another runner. I've decided to go with 5 wedges in each direction. Since I cut these pretty wide, I didn't need as many of the wedges, and I have a bunch left over, so I can either cut a few more or make a short table runner. The next step is to pile your wedges together in a pile so that you can take them over to your sewing machine and keep them in a stack, so then you can put them together in the order that you had them laid out. Thread your sewing machine with white or cream thread in the top and in the bobbin. Set your machine to your straight stitch at the normal stitch length. If you have a 1/4 inch piecing foot, place this on your machine. If you do not have a 1/4 inch foot, then you will need to follow your 1/4 inch guide for your seams. Start sewing the wedges together, placing the first 2 with right sides together and sewing a seam. So this is my pile of wedges. I'll take the first 2, flip this over, and then I'm going to sew along this edge so that when I put them all together, they'll stay in the same order. So my white fabric is my first fabric in the table runner. And to speed it up, I will finger press open my seam, take my next piece and place it on, and sew. Continue finger pressing open each wedge and adding the next one until all the wedges have been sewn. I'll be back in a little bit once I have them all sewn. At the ironing board, place the runner wrong side up. Press all the seams in the same direction. So starting from this one side, I will just press the seams down. So they all go in the same direction. Cut a piece of backing and batting to be 1 inch larger than the size of your table runner width and length. Next, we're going to layer the runner to prepare for sewing it together. So place your batting on your work surface, place your backing on top, right side up, then place your table runner right side down on top of your batting and your backing. Make sure the edges of your table runner are definitely within your batting and your backing so that you have the whole thing on top. Pin all 3 layers together all around the runner along the edge. Leave an opening on one end that's big enough to put your hand so that you can turn the runner. In order to remember to stop and start and stop them in the correct place, place 2 pins on each side of the opening. This will help remind you that this is where you start and this is where you end. Next, we're going to sew all of the layers together. Sew around the edge of the runner with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, starting with where you have the double pins. Back tack at the beginning and at the end. Don't run over your pins. And when you come to the corner, stop with your needle down about 1/4 inch from the corner. Pivot 90 degrees and put your presser foot back down and continue sewing. As you're sewing down the one long side, the seams are going to be facing the wrong way. So in order to help keep the seams flat, you can use something like your seam ripper to hold it down so you make sure you don't sew over your fingers and help the seams stay flat. As you're coming down the other side, the seams will be facing the correct direction, so it won't be as hard to sew. So I'll continue sewing this and be back in a few minutes after I'm done. So you can see there's a hole here to allow me to turn the table runner. The next step is to trim the table runner, backing and batting even with the edge of the actual table runner. So cut all the way around. Before we turn, we should clip the corners and carefully clip the inside curves, the ones that are going this way, in a few places, but make sure that you do not clip the stitching. This will help the table runner lay flat when you turn it. Place your hand in the hole between your runner and the backing on the end and turn the runner right side out. I try to push the corners in a little bit like this with my finger and then grab it and then pull it through. Then using a point turner, you can place that inside your runner and use that to poke out the corners. And I also usually will take it and run it along the seam to try to get the seam pushed out the whole way. It helps to get it nice and flat. But first I want to get the corners all poked out. And then I'll run it along the edge there. Poke the other corner. And then I can take it and run it along the whole seam. And you can see how it flips out very easily then. Finish doing that on the other side. Then take it over to your ironing board and give it a nice press. Next we have this opening to close. So I will fold this in, the quarter inch seam, and give it a press, and fold the top over also, give it a nice press, and pin it shut. The final step is to decide whether you want to put some quilting on your table runner or leave it unquilted. If you're going to leave it unquilted, you will want to do at least a small top stitch about a quarter inch from the edge of the table runner all the way around to hold it in place. And this will help it stay in place when you wash it. and it will also sew closed this opening. If you decide to do some quilting on top, I recommend that you do the quilting lines before you do the top stitching, because as you're stitching these lines, if you already have the top stitching, it may cause a buckle in near the edges as you're sewing it. For this one, I did these lines that are in the middle of each of the wedges. So to do these lines, I used my 10-degree ruler, lined it up with the same number I started with, when I was cutting this, but adjusted for the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then there is a dotted line 1/4 inch from the center of the ruler. And using that dotted line, I can line it up with the seam. And then I drew a line with chalk on each of these wedges, and then I was able to follow the line to stitch these right in the center. So that's one option for quilting. For this one, I put some orange stitching about 1/4 inch from the seam, but I only did it on the fabrics with the leaves. So I have one on each side of each of the fabrics with the leaves. Some other ideas are that you can use some of those decorative stitches that you might have on your machine and put some decorative stitches maybe on the seam or on the line in the middle, or even 1/4 inch from the sides. And you don't have to put it on every single one. You can decide to do it every few. You can use your imagination and be creative on your quilting on the top, and do as little or as much as you want. For this table runner, I'm going to stitch some little stars along the seam around each of the white fabrics. And this is the number 84 stitch on my Bernina, and I'm using a variegated blue thread for my quilting in the top and the bottom. I've also set the stitch lengths at the longest stitch length for this stitch. So there's the first line of little stars, and I'll continue doing this for the rest of the table runner. So I finished the decorative stitching that I decided to put on this table runner, and next I will top stitch around the edge, and which will close this opening. So I'll start right before the opening and back tack, and I'll take out the pins as I'm going. As you can see, our table runner is now finished. I hope you enjoyed learning to make this wavy table runner with a 10-degree ruler. Like and share our videos, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss future videos. Help us spread our videos by sharing them with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram. Visit our website, needlepointers.com, for lots of other quilting tutorials and free projects. While you are there, sign up for our free weekly newsletter so you won't miss any of our new tutorials. Happy quilting!